Day26 on my 3D tutorials. First of all, we're going to be doing some housekeeping. If you join me part this far into my tutorial series, please refer to my website www.andrewbooth3d.com. On here is some examples of my work. This is the asset we've just been working on. We've been now working on like a food mixer. My first 4 videos is located on the homepage, and then to refer to my other tutorials, please go to my tutorials tab. If you're wanting to contact me regarding the files or critiquing any work you have, or even wanting 3D artists to join your studio, please refer to my email address, which is a.booth3d@outlook.com. Alternatively, you can actually follow me on Twitter at AndrewBooth3D. This is my Twitter account. It has all my tutorials on there, on my assets that I do and working in progress, so on and so forth. Quite good Twitter page. I always constantly update my Twitter when I do a tutorial or work in progress. So now we've done the housekeeping. Let's start with the tutorial. This is the scene, my restaurant scene that I have so far. Remember yesterday we were talking about the difference in asset building. You know how if the singular asset, because it's movable, it's not ideal to place it in the scene, but to build it straight from an individual, new scene, and then for more bigger, stationary kind of assets like this seat, it's best to do it in the scene. Last time we discussed on how if it's a static object like a seat or a light, it needs to be baked into the ambient occlusion. But if it's a movable object like the salt dispenser or pepper grinder that it is, it's best to do it in a isolated scene, so that there's no artifacts that's actually baked into the actual ambient occlusion. Or if you do want to build the actual asset in the scene and you still want ambient occlusion to be baked here, you can. All you need to do is a process called explosion. What I call explosion, it's exploding the asset or components. This is basically when you take the object literally out of the scene into an open scene, away from all artifacts and all external lighting. This way the baker can just bake it. If you want a little bit of inclusion here, you can put like a plane here underneath it, like a floor. That's similar to what we do in a new scene anyway. But you also got to consider, I didn't explain this last time, but you need to consider processing power too. When you create a big scene, a lot of polygons and a lot of budget is required. And when you have a big scene, the more bigger the poly count, the more assets you add, the more poly count you add, basically. And that's the more processing power required to generate that scene. So in a sense, it would be more efficient to build smaller assets that's not in the scene in a separate new scene, and you just insert it like you did last time. So today what we're going to be doing is the basic build of the food mixer. Now I'm going to explain to you how it's going to work. And to do that, I'm going to bring up Firefox in a bit and get some reference, and then in Photoshop I'm going to explain to you how to build it. And it's a process that's slightly different to a singular object, because this one will contain components and small assets, a bit like what you have here on the coffee machine. This coffee machine is built off the base, feet, a handle component, a knob component. It has smaller components to build up the bigger asset, and it's more efficient for not only for topology wise but polygon wise as well. So I explain a little bit more of that when we open up Firefox. So now what I'll do, once Firefox is open, I have it here. Now it's ideal to save it. I don't save my reference, but it's a good job to do that, just in case you're not online. I don't do that because I find it more better to get different sources, different references. Even though I save all the references that I do use, that become a massive file, and a lot of that will be waste data, especially if you finish building it and you complete your asset. What you do with the images then? You can't, if you store it on your computer, over time that will be hundreds of gigs, and sometimes it's not good, but I do get references. References are key, especially when you're dealing with modeling. You see, how can you build an object if you don't actually know what it looks like? You have to know what it looks like. That's why it's key to get different references and different ideals and the way it looks and all sorts. So as I said last time, we'll be working off of this one. Now, when you look here, it's a basic object, right? So I normally put this to a certain screen. Here it has different pictures, different sources, different looks, so I can make my unique version if I wanted to. So this is good because I can get different views. I have different views there. Now I will be honest with you, you cannot always use straight off the picture. You had to use your imagination to a degree, because certain things you cannot see. Like in this picture, you can't see inside the bowl mixer. You know what it looks like, but you can't build it. Like here, underneath here, you don't know what components, wires, and all sorts what's on here, but you know they're two separate objects. So this is what's going to happen when we build it. I just get, if I get my pen, basically what we'd be doing, I do excuse my drawings. I do excuse my drawing ability on this, but basically what we'd be doing would be building the base. This is the base, right? And then the food mixer bit will be on top there. It kind of looks like a shoe, but I'm just roughing it out. This is just rough, There's not meant to be some kind of artwork. I'm just, showing you what does what. Let's say this is, for example, the actual food mixer. We'll be building it into different sections. If you look on the actual model, you have this bit here. I know it looks a bit like a shoe, but it's not. You have this bit here, that comes up. Let me just move this to one side. Pardon me. I am taking refreshments in between my talking, so I don't get dry mouth. That's not nice having that when you're talking. Talking from experience doing these tutorials, so okay. So basically, what we're doing, we'll be building this base first, and then this top bit will be a separate component, so that's 2 components. And then you have the jug, that's going to be another component. The handle is attached to the bowl, so that is going to be in another that's going to be another component. And then so with this is going to be like a see-through, a component, a plastic component with an alpha channel. And with all these components, you also have the component here for buttons, nuts here, smaller ones, but they could be done, I suppose, in a pawn sheet. I'll show you how to do that as well. So what we're doing is we're building up all these smaller components to make the big one. The reason you're doing it into different components because this top component can move. So if you want to program it so it can go up and down, tilting, you can with animation and all sorts. And that's how you build it. You cannot build it in one big model. It's better to build it into smaller components, then attach it as a group. That's how I did with this coffee machine here. That is a group. If you look on my outliner, that's a group, and that contains all of the assets built to make that, that asset. And that's what you do. So when you go back to the actual model, also keep bearing in mind each one has a different roughness. So the jug has a more mirror-like roughness, where this is a more metallic, rougher look. And you can define this in Substance Designer. I know it uses materials, but it's better to separate them as objects and all sorts. And that's how you do it. So you start off by having a polygon primitive cube. And as you can see, you don't see it. You're probably wondering why. Why can I not see it? That's because the actual object is placed on the 0 by 0 by 0 location. Now, if you press F, it does not go straight to it because you haven't got it selected. So go to your outliner, select it, then press F, and there it is. Now, you're probably thinking, what happened to my scene? Well, that's because the units is so small that it's so tiny in the space. If you go into the settings, you'll see that I have it set to inches because all the objects I'm building is in inches, but the room itself is in meters. Because the room is overall, it looks small compared to what it is. So basically what you do, just like the other tutorials we've done at the beginning, you change the default to 10 by 10 by 10. And then if you press F, it's slightly better, so now it can be seen in relative to space, and then you move it to space. The reason being you use this is like a starting point, it's like a primitive. You can define how big the cube is without any doing no maths or any cutting into it, just straight off the back. It's also good because you're not using memory. It's not using memory to process that, not like the others where you had to use your, when you're using the WERT tools, you know, these transform tools. Because we're not using them, we actually define it in stone here. So it's better when we actually define it in the space like that, if you catch my drift. So now what we do, we'll move that into space. So you press W. These are another set of tools you need to keep in mind. Shortcuts. There is loads of shortcuts in Maya. Now, if you press W, that does the move. So you can move on X, Y, and Z axis. So as you notice, I pushed it back to what it looks like it's near the table, but when you press it isn't. Also, you've got this little checkered pattern. When you move it, it moves the object. So you can place a bit like here, and you think, okay, yeah, I placed it, an object, in this space. So when I come back here, I can move it here, and think, oh yeah, that's now on the place of the surface. No, it isn't. Because when you press F and rotate it, it's still in space. That's because this is just moving it. You know, you're not actually telling it whereabouts, you know, how far back or anything. What you're supposed to do is press this button here. This is the orthographic view. Oh, sorry, this one here. This is the orthographic view. You have the top, side, front, and perspective. So now you can actually line it up properly, like so, and line it up. And then go back to perspective. And there you are. It's located in there. But I like to move it in this. I use perspective mode all the time, especially space placing an object. You shouldn't do, but I do, because when you have like a back wall, you know, if you push it back far enough, it goes far in, and then you can locate how far away you are from the location you are. So that's good. It is really good like that. But that is the proper way of doing it. That's just my workflow of moving it in perspective. Anyway, let's start on the actual build. If you look on the asset, you start with this like floor, and it goes up. Let me put this on my second screen. So what you do, some people scale this, actually get the measurements, and I do suggest you to do that. But if you're making your own assets, your own version of objects, it wouldn't be necessary. Or the only thing you need to do is scale it to the world. For example, you know a food mixer is not going to be any bigger than the coffee machine. You know it's not going to be bigger than the actual cooker. But you know it's going to be bigger than the light. You're using your environment to scale the object. And this is what I believe. You know, people go around, you know, saying, "Oh, this is not relative." You know, this doesn't look right. It looks too big or too small. But the thing is, if you're building your own asset, then surely, if you specify that's how big you want your asset, then that's how big it is. It's in the day, it's your artwork. Now, it doesn't mean, you know, that's your freedom. You know, it's your creativity. It's a bit like a painting. You know, in a painting, there's no wrong way of painting an object. You know, you can splatter paint on a wall, and that'll be your artwork. But it can't be ridiculous. So it got to be proportionate to the actual object. So if you have like a hand, the hand cannot be bigger than the body, for example. So it has to be respectful. You know, it can't be silly. You know, if you want to, you can go into Wikipedia and then get a food mixer in Wikipedia. I know people moan about Wikipedia, saying how it's inaccurate or whatnot because the freedom people can edit it. But the thing is, when you actually make on the page, you have to put a reference in. You gotta reference it correctly, and so it's more professional. Also, most people who actually say all these, who do all this editing, are professionals. So I was allowed to use, you know, Wikipedia in university, not as a main source but as a starting point, as long as I referenced it. So like you say, you can get the size of Wikipedia if you want, or do this, dimensions, and then you get a particular brand and you size it. You know, all these, you know, food mixes. If you go into view all on a particular one, they do have on the page somewhere if I can find one that has it. Here we are. If I go into this food mixer, when my internet loads up, you know, by the way, I'm just letting you know I'm not advertising Kenwood. I'm just using this as an example. You know, if you go into specifications, I do apologise, my internet's quite slow at the moment. Here we are. You know, it has, you know, capacity. You know, here it is, size in centimeters. So 34 height, 22 width. So using that, you could go to this cube and say, okay, it's this high. You know, you can say it's 22 high, and that's how high their food mixer is. And stuff like that. But like I say, if you're building your own asset, that doesn't really matter, because if you're using your own imagination, it's how big you want your object. If you want your object to be this so big, you know, if you want it to be, you know, let's say, if you say you want it to be like 35 high, this high, you can. Because this is the freedom of creativity. Because this is your asset. If you want it to be this high. Now, also, another thing to consider around that though, if your client requires a certain height in your asset, then do go to that specified size, because that's what they want. So here I'm just going to go to 15. Bear in mind this is just the base, because if you remember we got this and it goes up, so we're working on that. This is just going, I'm first of all building this bit here. I'll show you why, because it's easier to do that way. But so first of all, move that to the side like that. And I think, actually no, I make that 20. There you go. That's cool. Reason I make it 20 because this is going to have a little round bit on the top here, which I'll show you how to do later in the series. You have, and then at the bottom here, what I'll do, and then leave the rest of that like that, because I think that's a good dimension, 10 by 10. Insert edge, relative distance from edge, and I'm going to have it so it's here. So what you do then, you select a face, make sure you're in polygon, and you click this button here, extrude. So you're extruding that face outwards by a certain amount. So here I'm going to say 20, and that's still not big enough. So make it to 30. There you go. Now, as you can see, it goes outwards in all directions, so this will end up being out here as well, but we do that in a later stage. We're just basically blocking out the shape of it. So now, what I'll do, I'm going to create another cube, polygon cube, locate it. So this is going to be 30. Oh, one direction. That's going to be 10. Height, it's going to be 10. But the depth, it's going to be 30. So this is what it looks like. So then move it to move into space. This is why going an orthographic view is always good. So you won't need to mess around with this, you can just put it in there. Like I said, I don't do that. So then what you do then, you now place it there. There you go. Move up to there. You know what? That's too thin. So now what I'll do, you probably think, okay, if it's too thin, why don't you alter this? You can't. Not when it's like this. It's because I added a new typology. So what you do it here. You don't do it here because, oh, it did. Ah, well, I'm surprised. Normally when I do it that way, it doesn't work. You've got to be careful when you're using this, because when you do this after you add in more geometry, it can mess it up majorly. It really can. So do be careful. Normally I just use these transform tools here to transform it like so. And then what I do, I then go into fertilize mode, then move it out here like so. This is just a basic blocking out, so it's not meant to look like the actual object, but you're just getting the basic shape, which then you just edit, you just cut into it. And from here you get a cylinder. Now you can get this, a pipe. In fact, I will get a pipe. I just thought about it. It's going to be a proper bowl, so it's going to have an inner and an outer. So with this selected, you know, you move it into position like so. There you go. It's into position. So then you edit this and give it a radius of 10. No, that's too much. A radius of 5. Height of 5. No, say, that's too low. Say 7 by 7. Actually, you can make this 15. A lot of this is just iterations and changing things around, like so. There you go. That's 25 then. Layer. That gives enough space to work. Layer. Now don't worry about this, the size at the moment, because this will be changed. This will be the actual bowl of the food mixer, and as you can see, it goes, you know, in, out, in, out, in, down, in, and in. But when you model that, you know, you cut into it. You're just getting the basic shape. In fact, I'm going to make this, I won't make this 10. Oh yeah. Like so. And this is what you basically do. You just build the blocks first. I think I'll leave this here today. We'll be touching this tomorrow. We'll be building, cutting into it, making it more of the food mixer. But that's how you, this is the general way of starting it out, you know, blocking out, making, you know, decisions, what you want it to look, and everything. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining me, and, you know, please join me tomorrow. Thank you.